All right, SP. What's good, SP?
What's good?
SP, the writer.
The writer.
The writer.
I'm actually thinking about changing my name to SP the writer, like legally.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
You know, that is funny. I'm glad you brought that up because when I think about SP, the writer, I feel like you're like this James St. Patrick of poetry.
Wow, I sell drugs now. My neighbors
Like
think I'm
the
selling
ghost.
dope. I am.
The ghost of poetry.
Wow.
So tell us a little bit about the name. Silent. That SP is for silent poet. Right?
Silent poet.
Yeah. So
I can tell you exactly where it came from.
Yeah.
Not me.
Really?
So
Okay.
there's this Christian rapper, gospel rapper named Chris White. He's pretty dope. He kind of sounds like Nas a little bit. Mm-hmm. And I was up in New Jersey. This was years and years ago, long time ago, with my cousin Chi Chi the Superstar, who also co-hosted our 1-year anniversary Inkspired. But anyway, she had introduced me to him, and me and him were in the car. My cousin went in somewhere, and so my cousin had told him, you know, that I wrote poetry or whatever. So he was like, "Yo, spit me something real quick." And I was like, "Yeah, I don't do that." And this is long before I even had a show. And so he's like, "Nah, bro, like, come on, man, you know, just look." And I'm like, "But I don't do that." He was like, "Man, you just a silent poet." And it stuck.
Stuck with you.
Yeah, it stuck.
And I mean, were you at that time, did it click for you like that at that time, or did it kind of take some time for you to be like, "Oh yeah, that's..."
Oh no, I started using it the next day, but I was calling myself like SP 3000, SP 12,000, because then I was like, yeah, I'm gonna be 4 times better than, you know, Andre, and it was just crazy. And then I dropped that stuff and just was like silent poet. But then you buy a Camry and you see a lot of Camrys, so then I started seeing other silent poets. So then I started going with SP, and then I put SP the writer on it, and that's kind of stuck for me.
Yeah, I think I like that though. I like the SP because it makes people kind of ask you about it.
Yeah.
So then you can kind of give that story. So your writing, when the chances that I've had to hear your writing, because you don't really share it openly like that. We get like little bits and pieces of it, right? And then there's this big like surprise of a show where it all kinds of, you know, kind of just pours out. But when I have heard it, you know, the moments that you've been able to share it and, you know, in different platforms like that, it's very overt. Like it's almost intending to kind of manifest this discomfort, but like to make you, you know what I'm saying, to push a point that is very impactful.
Right.
And so, like, tell me a little bit about your frame of mind with that, because when I think of you this like even keeled, kind of chill, laid back
And
person. And then like your poetry is like, like, so it's like, okay, like there's two sides of this guy.
Right.
You know, this is why I'm thinking of you as this like James St. Patrick of poetry type situation.
It makes sense.
Yeah. Talk to me about it though, as far as just your writing process in that sense.
I want people to feel, you know, I'm the type of person where I feel things, but I don't always acknowledge that I feel them. Mm-hmm. And so in those moments when I'm writing, whether I'm actually feeling it or not, because it's not always just my personal experiences,
Right.
etc. But when people read it first, because obviously I have other poets that, you know, perform the work that I write.
Mm-hmm. We're gonna talk about that too.
They have to feel it. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? Jay-Z, I'm school of Jay-Z all day. And one of the things he said in one of his songs, he said, you know, the real shit you get when you bust down my lines. Blah, 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 blah. And so I was like, dang, like, I don't ever want somebody to sit down and read through my work and not feel something. So I try to make sure that, one, that poet is going to see it and respect it enough to be like, yeah, I'm gonna rock with this. But then that they then can go find whatever is in it that they need to find to then give it to the people through an even different lens.
So in that sense, like, how has that been with bridging that between being that you're not the one that's actually, you know, performing your pieces.
Right.
How have you, what's been your experience with being able to like really bridge that together for people to really feel it in the same sense as you wrote it?
Well, there's a couple things. I don't expect them to bring it forth in the same sense that I wrote it all the time. I do have a understanding of what I think it would sound like if they did it, but I'm not married to that. So the first thing I do is I make sure that I'm hiring people that I'm a fan of first, and that I completely respect and that I think can do this with this poem. From there, Crystal does a lot of the nurturing of, hey, we kind of want this to sound that way, and maybe we should try this and da da da. And I'm being a little more vocal about that, over the past year or so. But for the first 6 shows, she's been the person that's been a catalyst for that.
Cool. So a lot of the topics are about like worldly subjects, or that I've seen so far that you write about are social injustices and things like that. But a little piece of you sometimes comes out about love and relationships.
That's my favorite subject to write about, actually.
Really?
Yeah.
No, okay. Okay.
Because you can ask a lot of questions about things you don't understand.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you said that, because a lot of the times when I see your quotes, when I've seen some of your poems, it's kind of like you're in this space of questioning what it all means, So again, tell me about that battle that you seem to be having when it comes down to those kinds of topics in your writing regarding love and relationship. But you don't have to tell me about your relationships and love, but tell me. You don't have to tell me all
the way in there.
We ain't going there. But tell me a little bit about that process with your writing, as like what's it like for you, or what's kind of going on in your mindset when you're wanting to share it in that way that you do. Because my next question for you is, everybody that comes on the show, I always ask them, I've been asking them this question about love. Like, everybody sees and experiences it so differently. Right. So that's the piece that I'm trying to kind of get to as you write. What is your definition of love? How do you define it?
So,
see, everybody always does that. That's the thing. That's why I ask the question.
It's a good question, right? When I'm thinking, I'll answer the first one first. When I'm thinking about writing as pertains to love, I'm in a mind frame of why and how long, right?
Because, how long is this gonna last?
Right. Because you know, how long is love gonna last? How long is heartbreak gonna last? And then you can, just from those two broad topics, you can then go into the intricacies of the different feelings. So I wrote a poem called Cookie and Monster. And that's,
that's
a heartbreak
the one that actually
poem.
I was thinking about as I was, formulating my questions.
Yeah. Like that particular piece, I was like, it's based on a semi vague true story. But I kind of twisted it to make it make sense coming from a woman on stage. But it was like, why am I not being respected in this moment in time, and why am I being treated like I'm crumbs? You know what I'm saying? And then abortion. So then you can kind of tie that piece into it. But I've also written, I wrote a poem called Gingerbread Love. I should have just called it Gingerbread Man, because that's what people call it, a Gingerbread Man poem. But that one is talking about like, self-reflection of like, I'm the gingerbread man. Like, I've never slowed down long enough to even know that roses had a scent worth watering for. So it's like talking about that, but it's like, like, catch me if you can. You know what I'm saying? And so how long and the whys within all of that stuff to figure it out.
Wow. That's okay. Now that I have the insight.
A little bit, right?
A little bit, yeah. That makes a lot of sense, because when I see your quotes, I'd be like, what? And then it kind of made me want to laugh, but I'm like, wow. That was
you always laughing at my stuff, yeah.
It's like, that was kind of serious. I don't know what to think.
Right.
But, okay, so another conversation, actually, that we've been circling around a couple times is support.
Okay. Oh,
because
yeah,
I feel like that's another display of love, right? That's another element of our relationships in life, far as family, far as, you know, our intimate relationships, far as community, all of that. And you and I have kind of tinkered around the same common idea, but also some very different ways as how we see it and go about feeling about it. So
Right.
my question for you today, because I had to pull from that conversation, you know, to really think about what I wanted to expand on, because I feel like we didn't get it all in.
Very spirited conversation.
Yeah. And so, and that is like, there's this dilemma. I think we all experience it, where, you know, it seems like those who are closest to you do not support you in that same way, right? Like the showing up, the whatever. First of all, what does support look like for you, right? How do you define that? But most of us, it's in some way showing up or being able to support what that person does, particularly in the creative community, because I feel like that's where a lot of times is most needed. You know what I mean? Because of it's just accept me for who I am kind of thing, right?
Right.
And so where do you feel like this dilemma of family, friends, those who are closest to us seem to not be in the same space at times for a lot of people when it comes down to that type of support? Some people do, but a lot of people, I know there's a lot of people, and it's kind of like this common thing where people are like, we got to accept that. We got to accept that there's people in your life who are your family, who you know, have supported or been through certain things with. But the truth of the matter is, when it comes down to something you're doing creatively that you're, you know, passionate about or what have you, they're not going to show up in that same way. You just have to accept that. You know, why does that seem like to be a thing that we have to accept, as opposed to holding that person accountable for not being supportive in that way?
So the first question, support to me is defined as what you give when you can give it.
Okay.
And so then that leads into, I feel like people shouldn't be held accountable to necessarily support, because if they don't have it to give or don't want to give it, then I don't want it. And so I get it. And it's kind of,
when you say it, like, because that's the part where I'm like, well, it still kind of seems ambiguous, because
it can be
the simplest thing that
it could be a like. It could be a share. It could be a text message saying,
they don't require anything, but there's still
but
a
it
gap.
does require something.
What?
It requires them to say, and that is a form of support,
Right?
And to some people, depending on how you look at it, it can be a diminished form of support, or it could be a low level, low hanging fruit form of support, but it's still support. Like I got people that have texted me multiple times, like, yo, I see you, like, I'm proud of what you're doing, blah, 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 blah. Never bought a ticket, never shared nothing, never liked anything or nothing, but that's what they have to give and when they have to give it. And so I take that and I take any of the support that I get, however it comes, and then I'm able to channel that into the community the way that I want to channel it in there.
So what about in instances when you are more direct about what your needs are when it comes down to support? Like, you know, if those things kind of come along with the umbrella, right, of just in general, right? But say if that person that comes to you and says, this is just scenario based, I'm just throwing some
I'm with you.
Some monkey wrenches in here. But like, what if the person says to you, like, hey, I support you, I see you, and you know that they don't show up, you know that they don't like share.
And I'm like, I need you to buy a ticket.
Like, hey, you know what? Why don't you come to my show sometimes, right?
Right.
Or, you know, you're more direct and expressive about what it is that that you appreciate about them supporting and showing up in that way. And they don't. Then at what point do you're like, okay, This is the type of support that may be validated for them, but it doesn't really do what I need right now to feel like I'm being supported from you. So at what point do you create sort of that boundary? Or
I don't.
So you just kind of like, you're more aligned to just accepting it for what it is and moving on.
I am, because some people need a while to support, right? Like, just in general in life, you know, as human beings going through different careers and whatever we're doing, like we do different things. And I understand too, like there's some people who are sitting back and they're watching and they're like, okay, like he wants me to spend money to come to this, you know, this Inkspired thing. And maybe they have it to give or maybe they don't. But at the same time, they want to make sure that before they invest into me, that they see that I'm fully invested into the thing that I'm doing. And so I'm okay with, you know, somebody waiting 5 years, 10 years before they actually put their money, you know, their monetary support into me, because for me, that gives me even more of a reason to keep going. Cause it's like, yo, at some point I'm going to win your support over. And once I win your support over, now I'm able to reach you. Now I'm able to make you feel. Now I'm able to.
Yeah. It's that kind of, to me, sounds like the people will support when it becomes popular for them to support. That's what that sounds like to me. You may not be exactly saying that, but in my mind, that's what I hear, because a lot of the times that's true, you know, where you have to keep going for and do it for your passion and your desire for what it is, not necessarily to win over these people that you know, are in your lives, that are who are closest to you, who you feel like kind of should be in those roles of supporting, but that are not, and just continue to do what fuels you, and then they'll come along, is what I hear. Or they won't. They'll come around, or they won't. And I'm okay with that. And then full disclosure, like, the people closest to me have supported me. You know what I mean? So I don't have that particular struggle when it comes to what I do. Like, and I think that may be why. Because a lot of people, possible. A lot of people don't. You know, sorry, my ear is like. Oh, no, you listen. Do your thing. This is kind of like thing. But that may be why, and I've always been supported. You know what I mean? So I've never had the experience of the people, my family members, like even people that I went to kindergarten with, come to my shows. Wow. You know what I'm saying? Like, we always have this big group picture of people that I've known since I was a kid. That's because you're such a likable guy. Like, people can't. But everybody tell me that I'm not. Everybody tell me I'm mean. Everybody tell me that you are kind of mean, though. How? Just a little bit. When have I ever been mean to you? Okay, you haven't been mean, but you're very. And there it is. All right, moving on. Anyway, so that makes me think about, though, when you're saying having that support, and I feel like that makes a huge difference in how you perceive that and how you're able to push forward. So as a man, right, because of course we're kind of in this mental health awareness. Am I a man? Moving on. We're going to just act like that wasn't. Anyway, you want me to crop that out? You want me to edit that part out? No, I'm joking. Okay, so no, but you are like this, you know, charismatic type of person that I feel like, you know, owns the room. I feel like you own the room and in the space when you come in. But every time I see you, you're like Dolo. You're like by yourself. So is that sort of a thing that you have about yourself as an artist, is just kind of being a low-key person, but knowing how to own the room? How can people that are introverted or just loners by nature, or like kind of, you know, even keeled like yourself, but not like extra, you know, but can still take on those sort of roles? Because here you are, you're this person that's in the spotlight quite a bit, right? Mm-hmm. But at the same time, you are reserved about reading your poetry on stages. And so you've managed to find ways to still be in this role where you can still showcase your talent, make moves as an entrepreneur and producer, and network, you know, and shake hands and talk about, you know, your projects with confidence. But there are a lot of people who have all of these elements that you have, but just don't have that extra piece of confidence that can come in and kind of overshadow the moments in which you are kind of reserved, right?
Right.
To be able to put you in those spaces. So just talk about that a little bit so that others can kind of see what that process is like in transitioning from those different places.
So for me, it's really black and white, right? It's like, is it required or is it not? And if it's required, then you do it. If it's not, then you don't have to. So, 2018, when all this first started, like, I wasn't dolo. It was me and Crystal all the time, right? And so then as things started to expand for her and, her obligations became different and more expansive, then we couldn't be everywhere all the time.
Right.
And so then I was back to kind of my norm, you know what I'm saying? Being dolo. But for me, it was really just saying, okay, what do I need to do to reach people? What do I need to do to help the community? And that all comes a part of what needs to be done. Like I was never supposed to have this, I get 8 minutes at the end of every show to kind of speak. It was 10 and Crystal said it was too long, but, but she was the one that told me, like, you have to speak. You can't just come up and do the Russell Simmons, because that's what I was going to do.
What's the Russell Simmons?
Hey, thank everybody for coming. Good night.
Good night.
He did on Def Poetry Jam, and Def Comedy Jam too. But she was like, no, like, the people need to hear from you. Like, you have to be forefront in that particular way for the brand. You're already not on stage the entire night, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
So after she kind of instilled that into me, I took it serious, you know what I'm saying? And then I was able to expound upon it when I'm in different rooms and, networking and doing this and that and the other. So I wouldn't say that I own the room, but I figured out how to attract attention to myself, which then I'm going to take that attention and attract it to other business owners, other artists, other people, the community, et cetera, et cetera. And that's just part of what is required based on what I do. And so I tell people, like, just work backwards. What's your goal? What's required for that goal? And then do those things. Like, you don't have a choice. You can be as, loner-ish or, as solo dolo as you want to be. But if that's not going to get you to your goal, then you have to do the opposite.
Yeah, you got to figure it out.
Yeah.
Yeah. I want to pivot back a little bit because I kind of, veered from this question. But with that, I think it goes along together with it. What I see with particularly men is going through this, what kind of transition that you're saying, that trying to, come out of certain elements that require them to change because of what they want to do, the things that they're, want to elevate with, far as especially the creative,
right?
Because I think it's just different. You know what I'm saying? I feel like it's something very different that you have to manifest when it comes down to creativity in that way and being innovative with it, right?
Right.
And one thing that I don't see as often that I would love to see, and maybe this is my vantage point, of course, but and I see it's kind of peppered along, but is men. I see men transitioning in that, but I don't see the mentorship happening as often when it comes down to allowing other young men to be able to follow in their footsteps in that way. And so I feel like there's a kind of a gap in the community with that. I don't want to call it like gatekeeping because I don't think it's intentional. I just think it may be something that perhaps is missed or being missed, where a lot of men are, and I'm saying a lot, I'm saying some, because I don't want to make this a general thing.
Right.
But there are instances in where I feel like there should be more creative workshops and or mentorship opportunities for other young men in particular to kind of come in through, to be able to learn this balance of dealing with these sort of things that men deal with that women don't.
Right.
When it comes down to managing their creativity and developing a business or production and all those kinds of things. So tell me what your thoughts are on that. And do you agree or disagree, or do you feel like there's something there that I'm thinking? Am I off base?
So it's a couple things. First, I think some of that happens, but it's underwater. It's more submerged and behind the scenes. It's not necessarily.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. Like, why isn't it highlighted?
So,
you know what I mean?
Part of me doesn't know, and then there's another part of me that has this whole theory, right? So, it's out there, so I can say it, but like I don't have a relationship with my son anymore. We're estranged, right? And so it's hard for me to, in some instances, say, okay, I'm gonna go over here and I'm going to help this young child, this young man, young boy, and do these things and take him up, put him on my wing, and then I don't even have that own relationship with my own son, right? And so there's a lot of different reasons that people are disconnected from their kids. But when you just look at it as they're disconnected, then to put that in the public that now you have these other kids that you're taking care of when you don't even have access to your own. And so I think and I may be reaching a little bit, but
no,
not
I think I hear where you're going a little bit. In that it stems more or less from a generational thing. Like when it comes down to how we're connected with our families and how the social mindset is for men to be able to do that,
right.
Comfortably, without having some sort of something around it that they have to also bring into it as well,
right.
or that may hinder that connection there. So I don't know if I'm, summarizing it right based on what you're saying, but
no, I get what you're saying.
I mean,
it's definitely not in the forefront either way, right?
Yeah,
it's either not happening or it's happening and nobody knows.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? And so I think that we do have a responsibility to do that in some instances. And then I think there's certain instances where you got to pick and choose as well. And then even those kids or those young adults that you're helping also have to be open to that. Because, as guys, we, as people, period, but especially guys, we grow up and we feel invincible. We can jump off of any building. We can beat everybody up. So we know everything, right?
Yeah.
And so, I had to come to grips, in my early 20s with understanding like, yo, you don't know everything. Like, yeah.
Really?
Absolutely.
Wow.
But I thought I did.
Aren't you?
I thought I did.
Well, I'm so glad you blossomed into recognizing that you do not know everything.
But there's some people who never do.
And I always talk about that, about just there's so much beauty in just acknowledging that you don't know everything. You don't know everything, because if you walk around feeling like you know everything, then how are you growing? How are you learning?
Right,
how are you expanding?
But see, if you think you know everything, then you don't know that you don't know. So then you're like, it's like, how do I find out something that I don't know when I already know everything?
I guess that's when you start putting yourself in different places.
Yeah, jail.
Oh God. Okay.
No,
so
I went to jail for a night.
Oh, and then you figured that out.
Well, yeah, because it was like I thought that what I was doing, it was so.
Let me explain.
I'll tell you why real quick, right? So at the time, my son was 2.5, 3 years old. And me and his mom, like, we were good. We're not ever doing courts. Like, I gave her half of everything, plus blah, blah, blah. We good. So she had got on food stamps at the time. And so the state put me on child support. And so at the time I was working, like we was getting mad hours, you know what I'm saying? So I was like, okay, I can pay $400 a month, because she was like, yo, I'm just going to take the money, I'm going to give it back to you, and we're going to do what we've been doing. Bet. Literally like a couple weeks later, my hours got cut. So now at the time I couldn't afford to give $400 to wait for it to come back. So I didn't pay it for the first 3 months. So they gave me a court case because
wow.
now I'm behind in arrears. And so she was like, hey, do you want me to come to court with you? Nah, I got it.
I know what to do.
Yeah, I'm just go in there and tell them like, yo, like my hours got cut, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I'll never forget it. I went in there, this lady named Deborah Willis, we putting her on blast. I don't know where she at, who she is, but she was the case manager. And I had been calling her, emailing, couldn't get in touch with her, whatever. We get in court and I'm like, hey, look, da 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 da. And she stands up and was like, Your Honor, he's lying. He hasn't reached out to me, blah, 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 blah. And the judge, I'm talking about like a movie. The judge was like, you're despicable. It's people like you, blah, 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 blah. Bailiffs, take him into custody. And so I got locked up. But that was when I realized, like, yo, all you had to do was have Ebony come.
Yeah.
That's it. All you had to do is have her come. And she could have then vouched on your behalf, said what needed to be said, and you'd have been good to go. But that was, like I said, that was when I realized, like, yo, you don't know how to do everything.
Yeah. Life is a learning experience.
It is.
All of it, every avenue of it. So I think that's something that we all can learn. Right. We don't always know everything. But I want to talk to you a little bit about Inkspired, of course.
Okay.
And
my favorite subject.
Your favorite subject. We're getting to it. Because I want to for you to expand also on, as you talk about Inkspired, and tell us more about, the intricacies of it and where the vision you have for it moving forward. Mm-hmm. I had sorry, I'm pivoting, but I had the pleasure of working with you in Inkspired, and I just want to say that it was just really fulfilling at how it was like, it wasn't, and speaking of not knowing everything, the way you invited us in as a part of the show, you know what I'm saying? Right. It's like it was really, because there's one thing where you're like the dictator, you say, okay, you need to do this, you do that. But I felt like it was really something that you want to continue to continuously grow and expand from by learning from others and taking that in and applying it where it needs to go. And I appreciate that, because it made the experience more fulfilling for somebody to be a part of it. So I wanted to say that, but I wanted to ask you about putting poetry in different arenas like that, and how we are using the performing aspect to really impact the message and the depthness of poetry. Right. What's your thoughts on that as it relates to the vision that you have for Inkspired and moving forward?
So I've always said, like, I plate my poetry. Mm-hmm. We can go to Cookout, we can get a double burger tray, what I'm saying, cookout tray with with all the good stuff on the side, and it's gonna come in a styrofoam box or whatever, but it's gonna be hot and it's gonna be good. Right. But then you can go to a 5-star restaurant and they're going to plate your food a certain way. So the presentation of it comes with expectations of how it's going to taste. It comes with expectations of what the service is going to be, et cetera, et cetera. Mm-hmm. And so, what we've tried to do and what we have done so far with Inkspired is we've plated poetry, we've plated artists in a way where when people come or when people hear about it and decide to come, that they're looking at it and they're expecting something different than what they normally get. And so it's all about, like, the community and bringing the art form up, different types of artists, but especially poets. I feel like poets are underpaid. I feel like they're respected in their arena, but then outside of that, they're always the last ones to get booked for a show. Mm-hmm.
Let me who that poet is?
Yeah, I need a poet real quick. And you got everything else together. Yeah, we got $50. You know what I'm saying? And so we really are wanting to have poets and poetry seen in a different light. And then not only that, but it's a lot of poets that don't make money from their art. right? And so I want to be an example of showing like, yo, you can actually make a living, like a really good living from doing a poetry show or being a traveling poet or whatever the case may be. And you can go and you can be in someone's poetry show and make $4,000 for spitting 3 or 4 poems versus only getting, you know, a bag of chips and a piece of cake.
Right. Right. So what is the next move for you? What you got going on? Talk about when is the ink being inspired? I need to know. The Inkspired.
So we hadn't made this public yet, but the next Inkspired will be November 18th.
Nice.
That will be our
first to hear it.
Yes,
Poetic
exclusive.
JustUS Podcast.
Yeah. It'll be the 5-year anniversary show, so
Nice.
we're super excited about that. You know, kind of everybody had to navigate through COVID and all of that stuff, and so it's just been a different path than what we thought after the first couple of shows. But yeah, it's gonna be really dope. We got some new partnerships within Inkspired, but then outside of Inkspired that are being put into place and things are happening. So for me, it really is just bringing Inkspired to the point where it's the largest poetry event in the nation. And you know, we want Raleigh to be the home for that. Obviously, we'll travel.
Yeah, that was my next question. Are you
I've
thing?
been wanting to go to Atlanta.
Yeah.
But I actually stood on stage at the end of a show and said that we're going to Atlanta next summer. And then Crystal got off stage. She's like, no, we're not. But that's just, you know, trying to make sure that we do it properly. But yeah, I definitely want to go on tour. I want to do my tour differently. Like, you know, I look at people like Prince, you know, and when he used to go on tour, he would do different shows in every city. So he wouldn't just do the same show every night.
That's big.
And so I'm really like, like the first like kind of mini tour, like 8 cities, 8 weekends in a row, 8 completely different shows. Like that's the type of situation that I want to be in front of. And then as things start expanding, I've kind of gotten to a point where I'm like, okay, I'm looking like 10 years out, 15 years out, saying like, what does that look like? And I really want to, at some point, find people like me, find people who write but don't want to get on stage, but still want to see their work be brought forth, and then say, okay, I have, you know, 500 poets and actors that I have in this Rolodex, if you will, that are ready to work. My bad. And I have the relationships with venues, and I have blah 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 blah, and now we can just do a Inkspired 0.5 whatever show with these other people that we're now introducing to the world and helping them build their audiences in a certain way too. So that, and then there's this couple other ideas,
other things, you know. So is Inkspired your primary baby, or do you have some
absolutely
kind of,
that's my only child. That's my only child, and then I think everything else will be like adopted kids almost, because everything has to feed the baby. Everything has to feed the baby, and so as long as it's feeding Inkspired, then it makes sense for me.
Tell me one more thing before we go. How do you get, and this is just something for everybody to kind of start learning or to share these kind of seeds, and because you always like, I feel like you're a connector, you know, a bridge for the community and sharing information. What do you suggest when it comes down to sponsorships and getting sponsorships? And
Nah, it's funny because everybody asks that. Like, I'm getting that question a lot, and I'm really just a baby in it. But
well, you're doing a good job at it, I think, when it comes down to.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, I think you're doing a really good job in bringing the community together in that way, because it highlights a lot of businesses in the area.
Gotcha. So a couple of things. One, and we're going to go kind of all the way back first. Like me and Crystal, when we used to have these meetings with potential sponsors and things of that nature, we were desperate. And I feel like people can sense that, you know, that on you. And even if it's not necessarily a conscious thing, it's, you know, this underlying, and so it never worked out. And it wasn't until we were like, you know what, we're good. And when we walk into a meeting or we have a phone conversation with somebody, we're okay however it turns out. I think that's the first step in being that way, because once you get to that point, then you're free.
Yeah.
Whether it comes or whether it doesn't, you're free. And then you obviously still want it. You're there. You're having a conversation.
Yeah.
The other thing is I would say get a pitch deck done. You know, shout out to Crystal, the Queen Curator, that does Beats and Bars and Black August in the Park. Mm-hmm. She was very instrumental. Like I paid good money for her to do a deck. You know what I'm saying? I think understanding your business inside out then will allow you to expand on that deck. But we want money, we want sponsors, et cetera, and it's good, but it also goes back to your product. If your product sucks, people aren't going to want to give you money. If your product sucks and then you happen to get people to give you money, then once that money's gone, now all you've done is show more people that your product sucks. And so I think,
see the slight like rudeness, like it kind of sting a little, but it's like, dang, you know what?
But that's like that's what it is. And so, you know, it's been a journey for us to get to the point where we could have some sponsors that actually cut a check. Yeah. But I'm glad that it took as long as it did in hindsight, because it gave us time to actually have a product that was viable, that people knew about, that people could vouch for. And so then it makes those conversations a little bit easier. One of the big things too, like one of the last things I'll say is really understanding your data. We're just now getting into that, but once you can start really like honing in on your metadata, like about your customers and about your community and then that also will help you get larger amounts of money.
Right, you start understanding your value.
Yeah, absolutely. But you know, and I'm gonna teach a course on this one day. Yeah. But I think that a lot of people also miss out on small businesses. We know we try to, I need $20,000 and 10, and you do. But I think, you know, starting with your small businesses, some of those small businesses have 10 grand, and if they see the worth in it, or maybe $300, you know what I'm saying? But you're able to then say, oh, I have, case in point real quick. So I was talking with somebody about this and just kind of coaching them through it, and they had a lot of vendors at their event. And I said, yo, scratch the vendors, do sponsorships, and then let them vend. Yeah. Because now you actually have, when you go to a larger sponsor, you can say, I've had these sponsors. You can't go to them and say, oh, I've had these businesses as vendors. So now you just change your you know, the verbiage around it, and that gives you a leg up.
Yeah, I feel like that kind of plays into the barter system a little bit, where people are missing some of that, where we can be able to build in that way and just kind of label it differently, because now you're service for service. And I think service for service is just as much valuable than you giving me the dollars, you know? And so
it is. Yeah. But to the barter point, because I've bartered a lot, right? But I think if I'm the one that's coming to you to barter, I should be coming you to barter to then in the future pay you.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think people want to barter you to death. You know what I'm saying? And they always just want your services for free. And I don't think it should be like that.
Right.
Like I say, hey, look, let's, you know, so the Bro Code, they did our they sponsored the red carpet situation last time. But that conversation between me and the Bro Code happened up front. It was like, hey, look, yep, we'll sponsor da-da-da-da. And I was like, yeah, and this will be so we can have conversation moving forward about you actually being paid. Yeah. And so then people will find more value in that, and they'll put their best foot forward, and then whatever you got to clean up on the back end, you clean up. And now people are like, all right, bet, yeah, let me introduce you to such and such. Let me put you on to this. Let me let you know how you can save money on that, because they feel like you value them. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, SP.
It is over.
The writer.
Yes.
It is over.
It is over.
It's over for you now. But I appreciate you coming, though.
I appreciate you having me.
Like, this was very valuable. You're valuable.
I appreciate it.
I appreciate you.
Thank you for tuning in to the Poetic JustUS Podcast. Make sure you follow us on IG and TikTok, and don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you for watching.